And now back to your regular programming.
If you speak better to yourself.
You showed up for probably the dumbest conversation we've ever had on this show.
Let's have that smile again.
Tell me how that happens. Physically should not happen.
Relax.
If you say
Give me as well.
3 times a day, God will line it up.
He's just an absolute hack, and he gets his ass kicked by the teammates every week. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to Hack City. Joe DeLeone, Sean Anderson, 2 former college football players from the University of Rhode Island, and we're here to react tonight to Week 10 of college football action. Not too many crazy outcomes, but of course, lots to discuss, especially this Ohio State-Penn State game. Before we get to it, though, Sean, can you share with our listeners a quick word from BetOnline?
Joe, what's it called when a basketball player takes a shot from behind the arc? It's a literal general
do you
question.
Know?
A 3-pointer. And this week, with my BetOnline picks, I hit a 3-pointer, 3 for 3, giving out winners. All the lines provided by BetOnline. Okay. That is an incredible for all the 2K that you've played.
I don't know why
you were big. Yeah, you were center. You were jacking.
I wasn't
threes.
ready for that.
But BetOnline, they got the earliest odds in-game live betting. BetOnline provides you with all the action.
I thought you said behind the basket. I don't know
why. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL, to entertainment and political props, head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.
All right. Sean, Ohio State beats Penn State 20-13. Penn State opportunity at home and plenty of chances to win the football game. We're going to talk about the Ohio State angle in just a second, but Sean, I can't help but be focused by the fact that James Franklin loses another top 5 matchup, another game against Ohio State, and more importantly, a game where they had multiple chances to close it out. Situations in the red zone where they failed to convert, kicking field goals instead of taking chances to try and put points on the board when they clearly were losing momentum. And then there was the ridiculous 4th down decision for them to put an offensive lineman in motion and then throw into a crowded cluster in the middle of the end zone instead of just running the damn ball. All I can come to is this really complex situation for Penn State. What do they do with James Franklin? Because James Franklin, overall, we have total vague, ambiguous context to just forget everything. His overall coaching record at Penn State, it's tremendous. He is an all-time winningest coach in the Big Ten, probably in an upper category for Penn State's winningest coaches as well. But when it comes down to putting this team in a position to win a national title and winning Big Ten championship games, they have severely fallen short because they can't get past the top teams in the conference. This Penn State team, the way that they played, they don't look good enough to beat Oregon, and they certainly were not good enough to beat Ohio State today. I don't know if it makes sense for James Franklin to come back, but it doesn't make sense to fire him. It feels like we're on a trajectory for this offseason for there to be a big head coach opening and for him to decide to leave and to go elsewhere. This reminds me so much of Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly that offseason when they both left and they seemingly hit their ceilings at 2 programs. They could not get over that final hump. What do you think about that?
Yeah, he's a great builder. He can make a good team a great team. And he, credit to him, brings himself to an upper echelon where it's a good thing to have expectations because that means you did something with your career. But unfortunately, we have seen his ceiling. He is capped out. And there's just so much weirdness with this Penn State team that they just do things backwards. And I think he's cracking. And I'll get to that in a moment. But there's absolutely no reason for Katron Allen to have 12 carries. There's even less of a reason for Nicholas Singleton in this game to have 6 carries. Their misuse of players is tragic. Their constant inability to rise to the occasion against Ohio State and Michigan over the last couple years with James Franklin is apparent. And I have no love lost for Penn State fans. They rub me in a weird way, not the wrong way, but you're kind of like, oh, Penn State fan. Like you're just really overly passionate about a mediocre team. But what, you like Penn State fans?
No, just I don't have an issue with Penn State fans. I don't know why you have a random issue. It's just like a random shot in there that didn't need to be put in there.
They irk me a little bit, but here's the thing. They're dead on, and I don't think I could find a Penn State fan that would say James Franklin is the best path forward for the future of the program. And I think he's cracking. I think he understands the record against top 5 teams, and I think that he knows that today he blew it and his team blew it again. Arguing with the fans is a no-no.
Well, hold on. That loser, he should have kept walking. I'm never an advocate for it. But that loser who the minute that he said to him, "What's your name?" that dork turned around and walked away was really lame. So
I thought he mogged on James Franklin.
What?
You don't get to know my name. I'm a fan, and I just watched you piss down your leg against Ohio State.
No,
I'm for the fan.
No.
Dude, that is that is so embarrassing for James Franklin to feel the need to chirp back at fans when he's walking out of the stadium. That lets me know it's getting to you. It lets me know you can't handle it. Even when you're in dire straits, if you're the leader of a program, a historically great program with a fantastic, loyal fan base and a huge stadium, expectations every single year, put out tremendous NFL players year after year, and you keep playing the same act, you keep on being little brother in the Big Ten, it's done for. He's done, and it's got to him, and I saw it today. He fully lost his composure at the end of that game.
Quick thought on Ohio State. I think that we're reminded that this team, despite dealing with their injuries, they're capable of finding ways to win. Chip Kelly, great offensive play caller. Things weren't working. It was very clunky today. Will Howard didn't play a great game. The early pick 6 that he had where he made that decision way before he threw the football could not be any more of a blatant situation to lead to the interception. Like everybody on the field knew it was going to Jeremiah Smith. Overall was just not a very well-flowing game, but still found ways to complete drives, still found ways to convert in tight situations. I think Ohio State re-enters justifiably, not re-enters, but re-justifies themselves in that top 2 convo in the Big Ten. I don't think there's really much room for discussion for anybody outside of Ohio State and Oregon. If anyone had any doubts after their bad game against Nebraska and the injuries piling up on their offensive line, it feels like that's been a bit quieted today.
I loved what I saw from Ohio State today. 8th straight consecutive season with a win over Penn State. They bullied them, and after a week where they had sub 75 yards rushing against Nebraska, they cranked out 176. Quinshawn Judkins was great. Travion Henderson was great. And they looked confident. They looked poised. They looked like they've been there before because they knew they were playing an inferior opponent. And if you're Ohio State, what a luxury to know that you can walk into any stadium if you're playing Penn State, home or away, and say, eventually we're going to win this game, fellas. We just can't shoot ourselves in the foot too much. After the pick 6, they were fine. They coasted. They were good. They were solid. I thought that this team really showed their mettle, and I think you're right. They reestablished themselves. And I know they're ranked 4. It's fine that they're ranked 4, that they're a top 4 team. Without a doubt in my mind, they could be a top 3 team without a doubt in my mind.
Georgia, Sean, played a really sloppy game against Florida. 34-20, the final score. DJ Lagway, who had a really hot start to the game, went down with what appeared to be a hamstring injury, and that completely took them out of it. Their offense could not move the ball. You're down to your third-string quarterback. There was no energy to be had. Despite this, Georgia let Florida hang around for the entirety of it. It was tied multiple times. There were so many spots that it felt like Florida could maybe pull this thing out. I felt like, as we know, Georgia is still such a good team that even when they're not playing their best football, they're going to find a way to rough out a win. Big rushing plays, those final drives that they had, the late defensive performances that they showed up in on certain drives to close out this football game were extremely important. But one thing that gets really questionable and worrisome is the play of Carson Beck. Carson Beck continuously in some of these games has been a huge negative for Georgia's offense. It's not like he's getting set up for bad situations, bad ball bounces. He's making some egregiously poor decisions. I don't think that that's all on him, though. I keep coming back to the fact that last year what made Carson Beck so good is that the play calling was built around setting him up to have as little pressure on his shoulders as possible. They were running the ball well. There was good balance. They were creating opportunities with play action. I don't see that at the current moment. There's less of an early intent to run the ball and establish the run game, even when you bring back Tate Ratledge into the lineup, who was out with an injury at one of your guard spots for multiple games. They need to stop trying to make Carson Beck, Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator, needs to stop trying to make Carson Beck play hero ball. He's not that type of a guy. He is not the type of guy that is going to take over a game, throw for 350 yards, and improvise like Cam Ward. You need to build things up around him in order for him to play his best football.
His first halves are tragic. Georgia's first halves are tragic. I've been saying it all year. When they play a full game, they're the best team in college football. They can be, but they don't. They refuse to start games. They refuse to set the tone early. I don't care if they had big hits in the first half. It doesn't mean anything to me if you have 6 points and you're down to Florida. That's unacceptable for this team. That is not an expectation that can be met by this team. If you have 6 points at half versus Florida, you have 28 in the second half. Congratulations. That's great. That's not going to work out for you in the CFP. That's not going to carry out through the season. Why do you continue to try to open the game with a pass-heavy scheme? If you're opening the game and you're saying, hey, we've been slow basically all season to open these things up, just run the rock in the first half. Worst thing that happens is it makes the defense a little more tired. That's the worst possible situation if you went 3 straight run plays, 3 straight run plays, 3 straight run plays. I get it. It's not really feasible. I like a balanced mix. That's how you should operate. But it's so unsuccessful in the first half, this Georgia offense, that you have to change something. You have to figure something out. Run it to set up the play action. Run to set up the pass. You can't pass to set up the run. They're not good enough for that. Carson Beck isn't good enough to just go out and start dotting, and now we have to start spreading out the defense for him. He's not that guy. 3 picks against Florida is unacceptable. Today was a total, if we're doing a winners and losers of this week's college football slate, Georgia is a loser with the performance they turned in. I didn't see anything that was a winning performance. Like they got better this week. They didn't.
I don't think it's necessary to like sound the alarm on Georgia. Right. I'm not doing that whatsoever because again, when they're playing shitty football, they're not playing up to their potential. They're still able to win the football game. Examples of where that didn't pan out for other teams, Tennessee and Alabama. Played bad football games, were not good enough and competent enough to find a way to win and turn to a certain direction that was going to help them finish. Georgia did that. Georgia got a big defensive stop. They finished off their last 2 drives, closed out the game over, despite all the problems that they went through. They're still, in my eyes, in the driver's seat to win the national championship game. And it all is not going to come down to if Carson Beck plays well or not. It's all going to come down to, does Mike Bobo set up this offense to perform to its highest potential? He is the one who needs to take the majority of the blame for all of these problems and these inconsistencies. Sean, to jump around on some other scores across college football, we had 2 losses at the top of the Big 12 that now opens up a crazy future potential for who's going to play in the Big 12 championship game. The scores that I'm referring to, Houston beating Kansas State 24-19. And then, of course, we had Texas Tech knocking off undefeated Iowa State 23-22. First of all, Iowa State losing their game. I don't know if this completely pushes them out of the Big 12 championship conversation because 1 loss, they're in the driver's seat to some extent, with Kansas State now having 2 losses and that 1 loss going to BYU. They're probably in a really tough boxed out spot. They do have a little bit of leverage over Colorado. It gets really messy and murky trying to figure out that chain of who beat who. But Iowa State here, I think, has played themselves out of any capability of getting into the college football playoff. I stand by the belief that I do not think that more than one Big 12 team can get into the playoff. If it's going to be 2 teams, it would need to be an undefeated team and a 1-loss team. And right now we're on a trajectory to have 2 1-loss teams and a lot of teams that don't have strong enough resumes. This is tough for Iowa State. Their offense couldn't get it done. An offense that typically is quite potent with that receiving duo of Higgins and Noel getting the ball from Beck did not play their best game today.
They would have had a shot if Utah was still ranked at the end of the season, and they still would have had a shot if Kansas State had a better resume as they play them in their final game of the season. I don't think I never was that bought in on Iowa State. Them being ranked 11 and Indiana at 13 felt so odd to me. I never thought Iowa State was the 11th best team. I know they won the Cy-Hawk. I know Rocco Becht is a decent quarterback. It's fine. I like the Big 12 madness. I like that conference continually year in and year out gives us really exciting football down the stretch. I'm so much more disappointed in Kansas State, though. That loss to Houston is ugly and dumb. Houston is not a good football team. I have rallied against Houston football and basketball. It's a weird vendetta, but everyone sets up these expectations, and then once a year they do something like this. They just say, we're going to play spoiler, which traditionally I like, but they have the resources. They should be better. They should be someone that's not getting to 4-5 this late in the season. They should be better. And Kansas State, that is a piss poor performance. It's just, you can't have Giddens going for 50 yards. You can't have Avery Johnson throwing 2 picks. It's Houston. Houston is a doormat. Houston is a team that you just say, we got that win. And I think they were looking past them, which is what young teams do when they start reading the news clippings and start seeing themselves later on down the line competing for a conference championship. Well, you stumbled pretty bad here. This is going to be hard to make up from. It was a bad, ugly, sloppy game, and it's disappointing because Kansas State is an exciting team with a very fun quarterback, and we might be deprived from some meaningful football from him down the stretch.
2 huge wagon wins for our undefeated teams in the Big Ten. 38-17, Oregon stomps out Michigan, and then Indiana 47-10 over Michigan State. Of course, that stupid game was buried on Peacock, so we didn't really get to track that one super closely. So just a quick round of applause for our guy, Kurt Signetti, who is the FCS god for his performances at JMU and now dominating at Indiana. The dude continues to smoke his opponents, which is extremely impressive. Again, not much more to dissect there because it was buried on Peacock. We weren't setting up a third TV. This is what's so stupid about it. We can't put it in the quad box. I would have gladly put this in the quad box.
Yeah.
You got to get a whole other TV setup. I have Peacock. I'm not being cheap. I have Peacock because I have to watch the stupid Notre Dame games on Peacock. But you losers can't quad box it because it's on a separate freaking app that nobody wants to open or use. Separate of that, Oregon, though, looked very, very dominant in their performance over Michigan. In a way, Dylan Gabriel didn't have his best game because he's completing 76% of his passes coming into this, but that's crazy to even say out loud because he still goes 22 of 34 for 294 and a touchdown. He had a number of big passes that he connected with Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson. Lots of big splash plays, yards after the catch, and then, of course, Jordan James dominating on the ground, 23 carries for 117 yards and a score. I did laugh a bit about the weird, dumb, late throwback pass attempt on 4th and 5 by Michigan. Like, you just knew that this game was over and that they had no shot. Their season was summed up perfectly by Alex Orji running full speed into a crane operator while he was trying to make a catch. That team's a mess. Oregon, Indiana, kicking ass wherever they can do it.
I still think Sharon Moore is a good coach, by the way. It's just a bad team right now that they've fielded. They had a lot of guys go and move on from the team that were talented and carried them to a national championship last year. Tough to bounce back after that. Do you know I'm already getting pre-angry about NFL games being on Netflix during Christmas? I'm walking around getting angry about it every time I think about it because I'm going to have to
pay for Netflix.
Pay for Netflix. Pay for Amazon Prime. Pay for YouTube TV. Pay for Peacock. Pay for Max. Yeah,
you just said.
I know.
Pay for Netflix.
But it's just going to be a mess. And I think the country's economy is all coming from people forgetting their subscriptions. Go over your bank balances, people. Cancel them. You should. That's what I'm going to be doing immediately after.
The password sharing thing is out of control to the point where I often get blocked from using my own Netflix. I'm the only person paying for my Netflix because I had to stop using the family Netflix account because it claimed I wasn't in the same household. But because I created my account in California, it thinks that I am trying to operate it from a completely different location and device because I'm on the East Coast now. So screw you, Netflix, but continue your
You know
flow.
what made you big,
football.
Netflix? It was password sharing.
Yeah, all right, we're talking
that's
about football. We're talking about good football.
I thought it was really good for Indiana with Curtis Rourke coming back throwing 4 touchdowns. That's huge. Is Michigan State a team full of skells? Are they a doormat team so far this year in the Big Ten? Yeah, kind of. But him coming back off the injury, looking sharp, looking strong is huge. And Oregon, if you're the number 1 team and Michigan is weak this year, that's what you do. You put 38 up on them. You have to kind of respect that they do still have some players on their defense. I wasn't expecting a 50 burger. Wasn't really expecting a 45 burger, but it was good enough. You got the job done, all facets of the game. I like what I'm seeing from this Ducks team. They're not giving me any reasonable doubt to not think of them as the number 1 team right now. If Georgia was sitting at number 1 after the performance that they put on today, I would be, I think, ranting and raving.
No, actually, no. Time out on that one. Time out on that one. I think you're underplaying the craziness of the rivalry that is that Florida-Georgia game. Rivalry games in the SEC are just very different. There's no...
I'm aware, but if Lagway had stayed healthy in that game, and I going into a hypothetical situation,
Florida's better than
would have
Michigan.
been way closer.
Florida's a better team than Michigan.
That would be a slop fest of a game, and I would think I would watch all of it.
If it... I'm going to refrain from saying if DJ Lagway played in that situation, but Florida would beat Michigan at the current moment.
Oh, that's nasty work. I don't know about
that. Dude,
that.
they can't move the ball. Michigan doesn't. Michigan is so hapless on offense that they're just shuffling quarterbacks in and out. I made that comment on CFE one time when we were picking the game, and I'm like, we don't really know who the quarterback is. And they got, Pat and Dan tried to correct me and they tried to be like, well, it's going to be Jack Tuttle this week. Well, he retired.
Yeah.
And the reason why I made the joke was they keep changing. It doesn't matter who the starter is. More guys just keep coming in and out of the damn lineup. They should just put the damn punter in. Just quick kick it every single time. Maybe you got a shot of pinning it deep and then getting a stop that way. It's the only way that you're going to get points on the board.
I'd honestly run the Wildcat with Edwards and Orgy. I just honestly would. You know what? We're going to cheese
Colston Loveland. Wing T, Colston Loveland. Seriously. Alex Orgy doesn't have the instincts to be a good runner, apparently, because he's running into the backs of his linemen and then also into cranes. Put Colston Loveland back there. Wing T, Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings.
Look,
confusion.
We've been rallying.
You can install the wing T in 1 week.
We've been rallying for Iowa to run the wing T for a while, or to run the triple option. Whatever you want to do, there needs to be a Big Ten team that makes a stand and said, "This is what we're doing. We're going to ruin your season." Michigan should have done that in week 2. They should have said, "We're abandoning it. We're doing what the Dolphins did versus the Patriots. We're not going to go to the national championship game." But you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a definitive winning record at the end of the year because we're more talented, we're stronger, and we can out-athlete people with a kind of creative, confusing scheme. Right now, it's just a dead fish on the field.
Miami survived what looked like it was going to be an upset attempt, 53-31 over Duke. This game was close. It was close. It looked like Duke had this thing hand in hand on the road at halftime. But of course, and I keep making this comparison, this year's Miami team is 2023 Washington, where when they just feel like it and they can turn it on, they will splatter that board with points. They will put so many points up on the board because they've got the best athlete in the country playing quarterback for them. Cam Ward goes off 400 yards, 25 of 41 passing, 5 touchdowns, and he had a number of improvisational, acrobatic plays that we know that he loves to do on a week-to-week basis, just creating crazy highlights. QB1 in the 2025 NFL Draft, but this team continues to find ways to win. They are in the driver's seat for the ACC like they've been every single week.
Cam Ward is so fun. He's fun because he makes incredible throws on the sideline that no one else in college football can make. And then he'll turn around and he'll make a play that defies every single rule that quarterbacks should adhere to. Throwing across your body, leaving your feet while you're throwing, running across the sideline, throwing across your body, leaving your feet while you're throwing, not getting the shoulder slot right. Everything he could do all that in one play, but then he can just start dotting you up and picking you apart because Miami does have legit guys on the outside that'll make you pay. Jacoby George and Xavier Restrepo, I don't think get enough love because it is being dominated by the quarterback. You have a very exciting young quarterback like this. He is going to take care of it, but There were times in this game where you look down and you're like, oh, man, Duke is kind of hanging in there. You look up, Miami's up 2 scores. You look down again, Miami's got 50 next time you look up. It's a team that when they really start striking and a defense gets tired, they are opportunistic, and that is the best thing you can be as an offense because defenses, they're schemed well. They are. Like we got to give credit. Football defenses at the college and NFL level have evolved to a way where if they're playing pretty well, then the offense is really handcuffed. But if they start getting tired and the offense can get opportunistic, then you're going to see 5 touchdowns in the second half like you did with Miami.
Sean, next up, Texas A&M. Horrible performance against South Carolina. We're recording this as this game is closing out, actually just finished up as we're taping this. 44-20 was the final score on the road against South Carolina. Look, I know that many people certainly want to give South Carolina credit. They played a good football team. Put your finger down over there. Texas A&M completely shot themselves in the foot. They played a horrible game, poorly coached, bad decision-making in the short yardage situations where they were stopped, multiple 4th down spots where they were completely shut down and couldn't move the ball. I think one of the biggest things that was confusing to me, Marcel Reed had a good first half. It was a little bit up and down. He had some nice plays to finish things out to tie it up. But in the third quarter, they couldn't move the ball on the ground. They couldn't. Le'Veon Moss was out of the game. They could not generate anything on the ground. I don't understand. And we said this last week. You have the opportunity to deploy a unique passing attack and rushing attack with your quarterbacks where if Marcel Reed's not working, you bring in Connor Wigman. They couldn't find success downfield because Marcel Reed isn't that type of a quarterback. Why not bring in Wigman for a series and see if you can spark something? You were down so much and you were digging yourselves into a slow hole throughout the third quarter. Why not get that opportunity? And of course, have to bring up the 7 penalties for 96 yards throughout this game, and especially in the first half that put them in this position to lose it. Bad performance. And this is something that's always bound to happen for a first-year head coach at a new program. For him to have the letdown, this was it for Mike Elko.
I still think Elko's a dude. I don't think you.
I agree. There are no negatives to pull from.
I think he's had a very strong season with what could be described as one of the bigger disasters in college football over the last 3 years. He made them a respectable program this year. And the one thing, you nailed it. If you're going to do the 2 quarterback thing, you might as well stick with it at the end of the year. But deciding to rally behind one guy in week 10, that's not the move. That's not what you should be doing. You kind of have lightning in a bottle where over the last couple games of the season, you could get creative, you could get tricky, steal some wins, be a little bit different, and then hopefully in the offseason, figure out who your true number 1 is, have an open competition. The backup goes obviously to Notre Dame or some other program to start for them next year.
Relax with that.
I'm just saying Wigman would do numbers in South Bend. But you can't do it this late in the season.
He's not a Notre Dame type. He's not.
He's fine. Probably going to be overrated.
Riley Leonard was as Notre Dame as you could possibly get because he was so openly Christian that he could not have been more perfect to end up at. I mean, he also had
he's had a phenomenal year. Or something. You know, he's been stellar for them. But here's what I'm going to say.
Above average,
I want to shed some light on the dominant performance from South Carolina. The defensive line and
tune you out for the next
defensive line and the linebackers had a great game. Texas A&M isn't a slouch with their front 5. Their defense was great. Rocket Sanders, another nickname I'm already getting tired of, alert. He had a big game.
It was a boat.
144 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had a brutal fumble. But look, this came to Lenore Sellers bossing up and going 13 for 27 and just marching them down the field. Obviously, he was supremely accurate with a lot of his passes and hitting receivers right in their hands. Facetiousness aside, South Carolina gets up, man. I know that there's some beef that you have with them, but me looking at this team, they get up in these SEC games when the lights are on, especially at home. I am becoming more and more impressed with Shane Beamer and how
Shut up.
I was playing it up with Sellers.
Up.
I'm telling you,
impressed. He's blown so many games this year that they could have won.
We're watching a cultural ascension for him.
He's
in
been
this
there
program.
for multiple years.
Yeah.
Cultural ascension from what?
He's rising. I'm just
They
saying.
have been so flatline. It's not even funny. Like flatline's not even the right word. They've been so up and down. It's not even funny. They're inconsistent.
They should have beat Alabama this year. I'm telling you, they're risers. They fall? They should have beat LSU this year.
You can't call him a riser when he's been there for multiple years.
Well, now he's rising.
He's been there for an extended period of time. And there's been plenty of ups and downs where they were absolute shit and where they've played close games and they've had these big wins over highly ranked teams. He's got the Tennessee win. He's got this game against Texas A&M. But then, for every performance like that, he's got duds. He's got the shit bowl game that they played against Notre Dame.
Rough.
Where they gave up they had 3 interceptions against Tyler Buckner and still couldn't win that game. He's not a good coach.
Look, even instant yeast takes at least an hour to activate.
Any other program would have fired him by now. He is your typical coach who has a good recruiting classes, has a couple of guys who are just stellar athletes, brings in some good transfer portal players, but's not a good coach.
Oh, I think he's good. Look,
this is the typical overreactionary BS where a guy has a big win, and I'm sure it'll be in the comments. Oh, how could you say that about Shane Beamer? He just won by 20 over Texas A&M. Yet you want to forget all the rest.
That's a big win. That's a good win. Texas A&M
good
was
job.
rolling.
Good job, Shane.
That's enough of a win for me to deem them on the rise. Okay, they're going to have a huge test.
Stop saying on the rise.
In 2 weeks, they're going to have a massive test. They got Vandy. All right, and we know they're a wagon. So that's going to be the real test to see if they can beat the most middling SEC team that there is, just right in smack dab in the middle of the SEC. They beat them, then you have to admit that the team is good. You have to admit that. I like what I saw tonight, all right? They battled. Even when they had super sloppy offense, they didn't give up. They didn't just mail it in and walk out with their tail between their legs against a better Texas A&M opponent. No, they kept the foot on the pedal, and they won in dominant fashion. He's got Columbia buzzing.
It's a good win. Good job, Shane Beamer. But again, I reiterate, there is going to be a lot of overreaction to this, propping him up like you're doing right now.
I would agree, but if you beat the number 10 team this late in the season, with the crazy season that they've had, I think that it's warranted.
No, I don't.
That's fine. I wouldn't expect you to. I'm
giving him a little bit of credit, but again, you're making it seem like that was some national championship season defining win that's going to set them on some sort of trajectory to go on to be a premier program.
They could win their next 4. They really could.
Who do they have?
Vandy.
Okay.
Mizzou.
Yeah.
Wofford.
Of course.
Clemson.
I don't think they'd beat Clemson.
They could win those next 4.
Is it at Clemson?
It is at Clemson, yeah.
They're not beating Clemson. Speaking of Clemson, 33-21. They lost at home to Louisville. Dabo, what the F? What the hell? They got ran all over in this game. ESPN sums it up perfectly as I see on the right side of the screen for where I have all the scores pulled up. Phil Maffa walks in late, consolation touchdown for Clemson. It's just like the Chris Ball hits a big 3
to cut the lead to 37 or something like that.
I forget what it was. Clemson, Dabo never fail to falter. They never fail to miss expectations. They were on this trajectory. Everybody was hyping them up and building them up quietly. Like, oh, they're going to win the ACC this year. I heard so many folks, a lot of people were doing this with Clemson, that they were just assuming because of after the way they played against Georgia and the way that they were beating up on the back end of the ACC, that they should be the rightful favorites to win the ACC this season, not Miami. A lot of people were discrediting Miami for the close games that they had. I'm not doing it. This is ridiculous. We keep giving Dabo second chances when he doesn't deserve them. Give Miami the love that they truly deserve instead of trying to claim that this Clemson team was going to win the ACC. It's Miami's conference. Hurricanes are going to get it. Dabo, you stink.
Yeah, Dabo had a couple rough calls in this one. To opt for a field goal when you're down 3 scores in the fourth quarter with 12 minutes left.
And it got blocked.
To subsequently have that field goal blocked is just a signifier that it was not your night at all. I heard a lot of buzz this past week about Klubnik and that he has had
For weeks he's been claimed as been like he's a quiet Heisman guy.
That's what I've been here. I'm sitting here like, I've got more confidence in Klubnik than I've ever had in his career in college. Cool.
Wait, you know what happened?
Huh.
Clemson and Cade Klubnik, and I was not one of these people. I was willing to move them up in like a top power ranking because they were doing well, but I wasn't ready to buy into this. There is a pocket of media folks that cover college football that will just look at the box scores. Don't tell me you were watching NC State Clemson. I know you weren't. I know you weren't watching these games. I know for a fact that you weren't paying attention to UVA versus Clemson. You weren't. Because I wasn't. Most people weren't. I wasn't tracking these things closely because it was unimportant at the time. But when you then parlay that lack of attention towards them to then propping up said player to win the Heisman or for said team to win the ACC, it's incredulous. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. That pocket of media folks look at the box scores, they pull out the numbers, and they think, oh, why is it Cade Klubnik being talked about for the Heisman? Because they didn't play anyone. That's why.
Yeah, that was rough. And, it's fine when Clemson is buzzing, but how much are we going to read into the NC State game? A win against Stanford, a win against Florida State, a win against Wake Forest, and a win against UVA. Like that, those are all genuine.
The back end of the ACC.
Basement teams.
They didn't play a single good ACC team in that stretch.
Yeah, that's awful. Here's the thing, though. They've been running the ball well. Phil Maffa has looked like a stud, so I get it. Like I am not too good to be duped by a big, strong running back running for 2 touchdowns in a game, 150 yards a game. Like I will get sucked into that vortex very easily. But I didn't have delusions of grandeur that Clemson was going to be a world beater, especially after seeing that Week 1 Georgia game. Like that set the tone for this season. They tried to do the bit where we're going to crawl back and have a resume that's strong. But you can't lose to a Louisville team that's not as strong as Louisville is not strong enough for you to sit here and think like, you know what? Maybe we'll give them a pass on that. There's no pass for this. You're done for. Enjoy your decently sized bowl game. That's where you're going to be. It is genuinely, you're right, Miami's conference. And if they keep on winning like they do, it's going to be maybe Miami's playoff.
All right, folks, we're going to get out of here. We'll talk to you later. We'll be back on Monday with date to be determined, but we'll be back with our NFL reaction show. Make sure you're subscribed on audio and on video. Leave us a 5-star review at Hack City Pod, at Joe DeLeone, at Sanderson Radio. We'll talk to you folks later.